Now, everybody, quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Good morning, it is Mark Thompson's show. I'm Alistair on this Friday. You know that this is fabulous Florida coming up with John Daly. Michael Shure has the day off, but Jim Avila will be here to talk politics, and then we'll get your movie reviews with Michael Snyder. So that is coming up on this Friday, but it is a big, big day with some Supreme Court rulings handed down this morning. So I loved our conversation with David Katz so much yesterday that I have summoned him again today to talk about Supreme Court rulings that came down on the student loan forgiveness plan and also on LGBTQ issues, and a web designer that just wasn't feeling it because religious doctrine, didn't support the thought that she should design a website, or that person should design a website for a gay person. And so we'll talk a little bit about that ruling as well. So David Katz will be along in just a few minutes to discuss that. But welcome to the show and welcome to Friday. It's going to be a beautiful day around the Bay Area and wherever you are. So thanks for being here with us. Right? Mark Thompson is, of course, off on vacation. Just some show notes for you. He will be gone on Monday as well. So Albert and I will be back. Yeah, I know. But and then the show is
Kim. I didn't know that. So
are you going to be with me on Monday?
I will be there with you on Monday.
Thank you. Okay, and so then of course it's the 4th of July on Tuesday. And then we are dark on the 4th of July. Actually, both Mark and Nikki's show will be dark on the 4th of July. And then we'll be back on Wednesday like normal. So that'll be what we're doing. I see already a lovely contribution from Maria. If you could put that up on the screen, Albert. But we're very grateful. Of course, the show is crowdfunded. And so the super sticker function is live. And thank you to Maria for starting us off with a $5 super sticker. That's how we stay alive. That's how we keep doing the show. And of course, themarkthompsonshow.com is where you can find the Patreon and the PayPal links as well. You can also find the way to listen to podcasts if you want to just take us along for the ride and you maybe can't watch the show. You can always listen to it as well, kind of like the old days of radio. But first, I wanted to talk about these student loan ruling that came down today. The Supreme Court is saying no to student loan forgiveness, and in doing so, they have quoted Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, Justice John Roberts. He used a quote from Nancy Pelosi. She made it while President Biden was running for office. And what she said is that people think the president of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That, she said, has to be an act of Congress because Congress controls the purse strings. So later on, after he's in office, President Biden, and he tries to forgive people the $10,000 of their debt, she is supportive of that. But Justice John Roberts uses that quote in his ruling, in his opinion. He said, it is the executive seizing the power of the legislature. So that's why he said that the president did not have the power to forgive student loan debt. A lot of people were waiting for this ruling, thinking it would make a big financial difference to them. Hoping you can tell me what you think in the chat. You think it was a good decision or a bad decision? Do you understand why the decision was made? The other decision that came down today has to do with this website. And I'll read you the response from President Biden to this. He's already vowing to work with states to figure out how to not roll back civil rights protections. But basically, the High Court ruled 6-3 that a Colorado web designer named Lori Smith does have the right under the First Amendment to refuse to endorse messages that she disagrees with. So you can discriminate against people if your religion tells you to, basically. This ruling disappoints me. But let me know how you feel about it. The president is, of course, disappointed in the Supreme Court's ruling. Um, he said he is deeply concerned that the decision could invite discrimination against LGBTQ people. And again, that his administration will work with states to fight against attempts to roll back civil rights protections. So that's what we have. We have no student loan debt forgiveness for us, and we have it's okay to discriminate if your religion says that's what you should do.
Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could have seen it coming. For the student loan forgiveness ruling, I understand the thought behind it, that Congress does control the purse strings. And so maybe in an executive way, you could argue that the power was being seized unlawfully. And so I get that ruling more so than the other ruling. So we'll be talking with David Katz this morning. Hopefully, he was going to try to beat traffic to come and talk to us about it. We'll circle back to it, but right now let's move forward. Well, let's move forward a little bit with some other.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wanted to talk to you about this. You've seen day after day after day after day, Bay Area tech companies doing layoffs, doing cutbacks, right? Well, I saw this story yesterday in SF Gate where Canada has a new plan to poach Bay Area tech workers that have been laid off. They want to bring in these tech workers. They are keeping applications for H-1B holders open through the month of July, hoping that most of them will come from Silicon Valley. The Canadian Consul General to San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Hawaii told the Mercury News that's where the talent is. This is where we're coming to attract talent. We want you. And so they've opened a 60-day window where they're calling it a pink slip scramble for options.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Apparently 90% of H-1B visa holders were able to find new jobs. But a lot of them from Meta, from Salesforce, from Google, there have been 40,000 people combined from all these companies laid off since November. Some startups have just shut down. The funding has run out, and that's it. They're closing their doors. And we saw it with that pizza robot company. We saw it with a furry pet company. All these weird startups, they're just going belly up. And that is another 200,000 total. Well, altogether, 200,000 worldwide tech layoffs since 2023. So Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship says we have been watching very closely what's been going on in the tech sector. And we've seen a public narrative about layoffs. We've been having private conversations about opportunities here. So does Canada then become the new center of the world for tech? It could happen. They are going to offer 10,000 open work permits for the holders of American H-1B visas, as well as temporary resident visas for their families, H-1B visa holders. They have only 60 days to find a new job or leave the country if they are laid off, I guess. Is that once they're laid off in America, these folks have only 60 days to find a new job or get out. Well, it makes it easier for them to go to Canada then, as seems to me. So it's a way for them to bring in these skilled workers that are here in America from other countries.
Yeah, we
I
just need to
think
know if there's actually companies in Canada that are willing to hire at this moment. But I,
I
I mean,
th- I think
it's an
there
easy way
are.
to get
Yeah.
your way to stay here, especially if you're one of these unfortunate layoffs.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for people, but I just wonder what that does to American companies, and whether that will kind of shift our tech power. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, something to consider and talk about. Another story that I was following today is this. It's vacation season, of course, and here's another issue where you know see people going to these amazing places and doing damage. And I don't know why you would bother to travel to see historic sites if you didn't respect them. But there was a tourist allegedly trying to carve into the Colosseum in Italy. A California man visiting Italy caught another tourist allegedly carving into a wall at the Colosseum in Rome, captured footage of it. His name is Ryan Lutz from Orange County. He was backpacking through Europe after graduating from Cal Poly Pomona. And he said, I knew when I saw this that when I videotaped it, I could probably help. And so he sees this guy, you can see here, trying to carve something
My
into the
bad. I'm
Colosseum.
sorry.
Yeah, no, not funny. I mean, look at his face. He's like he's smiling. No. So he turns this video that he takes of this man carving his initials or whatever into the 2,000-year-old Colosseum. And because he took that video and turned it over to authorities, I think they managed to get the guy. Yeah. He said, I was angry while filming this. Ridiculous. So, I mean, if you see something like this in your travels, I think you do videotape it, you know? He said, wherever this guy's from, it's fairly obviously he feels entitled to carve his name into a significant monument. And that, he said, seems pretty
It was
selfish
wrong,
to
it
me.
was stupid, and I'm trying to be
Yeah.
a better person.
Okay, so I'm so excited because we talked a little bit about the Supreme Court rulings, but now we're going to really talk about the Supreme Court rulings. Let's welcome in David Katz, a former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney. Hi.
Great to be with you today.
Thank you for braving traffic to get here to talk about it, because we've got some pretty important rulings that came down. First of all, let's talk about the student loan debt forgiveness, which I kind of understand. And I was talking about Justice John Roberts, who had quoted Nancy Pelosi in his ruling today, saying that she had talked about that the president didn't have the right to do this, that it was a legislative power. And that's later on she came around and said she supported the president, but back when he was running for office, she said the president can't do that anyway. So what are your thoughts?
Well, Kim, those things are very selective because obviously people are trying to determine whether something is legal. It's a difficult question. I think in fairness, Pelosi was trying to say, there are some issues here. Why have any issues? If you want to have the student debt relief, bring it into Congress and we'll try to build a consensus to back it. Now, of course, the problem is that there is a consensus, a Democratic consensus to back it. There's a Republican opposition to it, that it's some giveaway, and they think that somehow it's going to appeal to working class voters, that this is a bailout for rich kids, which of course it's not mainly a bailout for rich kids. It's very hardworking people who got through school, which is ridiculously high, by taking out these loans. And then a lot of times they went into fields or they went into job markets where they really couldn't repay the loans. And so there's been a lot of politicking over the issue. And so I think Roberts was like, see, gotcha. But, it's so funny because does Roberts want to do what Pelosi thinks is legal and not legal on Dobbs and overturning Roe v. Wade? Does he want to do what Pelosi thinks is legal and not legal and get rid of Citizens United? And of course, Roberts was really posturing on this because the law says that the president does have the power under this Pandemic Relief Act to modify student loans. So the argument is that he could modify them and suspend them. You could not pay for years, which is what's happened. People have basically not paid for years on these loans probably over 90% of the people, Kim, are not paying
Yeah.
on these loans. They have loan suspensions. Biden ran on not just a suspension, but of some relief. So it would be up to $10,000 or $20,000. And I just have to say one note here. When you look at the relief that was given to businesses during all of these things, going all the way back to TARP, but now, of course, the one that everyone's thinking about, the PPP, all of these relief acts, billions of dollars going to companies. You know, the argument, if you'd opened up an auto shop, an auto body shop, instead of going to college, if you'd gotten a loan to start your auto body shop instead of to get your college education. Well, the reality for this appeal to the working class to try to get them mad at people who went to school when they didn't have the opportunity to go to school, or they didn't want to go to school, and I have a lot of sympathy for those folks. They did relieve a lot of their burdens. They did relieve a lot of their financial burdens. And of course, I think, just to sort of round out my thoughts on this as a preliminary matter, this will become a campaign issue because it's been perceived as very much having Republican opposition. There are millions and millions of people who have these student loans. As I said before, it's just giving them $10,000 of relief from having to pay back, at most $20,000 for some people. And yes, they could find somebody who's a poster boy or poster girl for someone who probably should be paying back the loan. But there are millions and millions of people who just can't. They don't make enough money. I think 60% of people were not paying back these loans, were not servicing them even before the pandemic. So it's a very, I hate to be cynical, but it's a very popular issue for the Democrats. They're giving a small amount of relief to millions and millions of people who need it, and the Republicans are standing athwart of this. They're stopping this when they've given away billions and billions of dollars to their friends, their cronies, the Republicans, big contributors, big business, small business, and they won't give $10,000 or $20,000 to millions and millions of people. You could start doing the campaign ads in 2024 for the Democratic candidates.
Does it say something about what the president's powers are? Is this just applying to this ruling only, or is it a broader discussion of what the president can and can't do?
Well, there's something called the major case doctrine. And in the dissent, Kagan lampooned this major case doctrine and said it was totally made up. And I agree with Justice Kagan and the two who joined her that it's totally made up. It's just out of whole cloth because the Republicans see a way to not approve what they call the administrative state, the regulatory state. And I don't want to get too inside baseball, but the idea is this. Obviously, the courts have to interpret statutes. If a statute says you can modify, does a modification mean completely stop? And the Republicans and the Supreme Court justices, the 6 of them, think that they've got them. Gotcha, right? Gotcha. Modify isn't stop. Chief Justice Roberts, who wrote the decision, said, well, this was modified in the way that the French nobility was modified by the French Revolution. They were exterminated. So obviously getting totally rid of a debt, even if it's 10 or 20,000, is not a modification. So they say it statutorily doesn't follow. And if Roberts had stopped there, that would be one thing. But then he invoked this major case doctrine, which is that something of this importance, it has to be crystal clear by Congress. And so the word modify does not crystal clear mean extinguish the debt, completely knock out the debt. And so that's what Kagan said. Kagan said, maybe it's okay. I disagree with you. I think that modification in this sense, in the Pandemic Relief Act, this was part of the pandemic relief. There are still a lot of problems with the pandemic. There are still a lot of problems with the economy. I think it's a fair interpretation. But even if we disagree on that, don't invoke this major case doctrine, which says you have to micro-describe in the statute. There's no rule that you have to micro-describe in the statute what you want to do. You just have to describe it. So what people are worried about is that in some statute that says we're going to deal with the environment, we're going to deal with environmental harms, that when they say, okay, that includes regulating power plants, well, you didn't specifically say power plants, did you? And so just doing something about air pollution and environmental problems, it doesn't micro-describe that includes power plants. So you can't regulate the power plants. And while I'm lampooning that, that's actually what people are really worried about. And that's what Gorsuch and that gang are always invoking, this major case doctrine to basically make it a higher level to approve regulation, especially of the fossil fuel industry.
Let's switch over to the ruling about the LGBTQ discrimination. The
Can I
court
just say one
ruling.
last thing about this?
Oh, yeah, please.
Biden is going to try very hard to find some way to get relief. He's under a lot of pressure from student groups. He's under a lot of pressure from these millions of people who are just got very bad news today that they're going to trying to resume the collections. They're going to get those Dunning letters. They're going to get hassles. They're going to get, I guess, if the government can do it, they're going to put liens, levies, you name it, and make life difficult for millions and millions of people who really cannot repay those loans, but they're going to give them a huge hassle. And those people are going to be, I think, galvanized first to demand new legislation or new action. And then I think they're also going to be inspired to vote Democratic in 2024. Let's go ahead to 303.
Yes, this is the 6-3 ruling that said the Colorado web designer, her name is Lori Smith, does have the right under the First Amendment to refuse to endorse messages she disagrees with. Doesn't have to put up this website or work on this website because she disagrees with LGBTQ issues based on her religion. So it's okay then to use religion to discriminate? Is that what the court ruled?
In this instance, yes, the court ruled that you can discriminate on this basis, from which you have to conclude that gay marriage and rights to associate in that sense are secondary rights. Because if this had been two blacks getting married, if this had been a Hispanic getting married to a non-Hispanic, if this had been a Catholic getting married to a Jew, there couldn't have been this discrimination. And so those are first-class rights. And so gay people are rightly indignant that, okay, so our rights are second class. I mean, the irony is that gays could not discriminate against a Catholic customer or a Catholic would-be customer. Think about that. But the Catholics or the evangelical Christians can discriminate against gay people.
Well, how is that fair?
Well, it's not fair. It's not fair. And what that means is that these are second-class rights, that what would not be permissible if you discriminated on the basis of race, religion, ethnic status, you can do on the basis of the fact that it's a gay couple if two things are present. If you supposedly have a religious belief in that you believe that it's wrong, it's under the Bible or under your religion, that gay people get married, you have that religious conviction. So if religion is your reason for not doing it, then that's impermissible. And also if you have to do something that's sort of artistic. Remember we had the guy who made the cake, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And that case got sent back on a procedural technicality that the Civil Rights Commission in Colorado hadn't fairly heard his claim of a religious exemption from having to make the cake. And people said, wow, make a cake. How creative is that? The idea is that you shouldn't be forced to speak or write or act on behalf of somebody in a creative way when you don't believe in that. They're forcing you to speak. They're forcing you to act, Kim, in a certain way. That's the argument. And the question is, does designing a website go far enough? And the Supreme Court says 6-3 that yes, designing a website is far enough. Now, painting a fence, when someone calls and says, hey, I want you to paint my fence, and you say, I don't believe in gay people living together. I see that you're two gay people living together. I won't even paint your fence. I know you want it repainted white. That person probably has to paint the fence white, right? To do a mural, right? On your fence that shows two gay people holding hands. That is probably covered by this ruling, and the person could say no. But this whole thing is, people are very suspicious of this. They think this is very manufactured. However you feel about the issue, there is this idea of standing. There's this idea that, the courts just don't issue advisory opinions, or because you want an opinion, you should get an opinion, right? That you really have to have a case and controversy. That's what the Constitution says. And so there has to be standing because it's a real case. It's not just a made-up case. This one looks very much like a made-up case. So it's come out now that the person who supposedly wants the website done didn't want the website done. Somehow this was either phonied up, or it was a test case or a reverse test case where this religious organization wanted this ruling. And so they sent out this thing that looked like it was a request, because what it actually said was, we're having a wedding. We're two gay people. We'd like you to do the placemats. We'd like you to send out the invitations and design. We might even go as far as wanting to have a website celebrating our wedding. Website. So it was only conjectural that there was ever going to be a website. It was not very clear that this person even wanted the website. Now it turns out that this person has come out and said, not come out in that sense, but has been interviewed. Somebody finally found this person, interviewed them, and said, wow, this is really interesting. I didn't want anything. I did not send this. I swear under penalty of perjury, I did not send this thing. Now, their argument is that they're entitled to get declaratory relief because this could happen. And once you say, I'll do websites for anybody or place cards or whatever for any wedding except a gay wedding, if you put that as your ad, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission would come after you. So the argument is that you had a right to a declaratory judgment. You had a right not to be intimidated. You were trying to exercise your religious rights to not do something that you claim your religion forbade, and yet you were about to get pounced on by the Civil Rights Commission. So the Supreme Court said that there was standing for this thing. But the other case was also questionable, by the way, because that was one that also they said the student debt forgiveness shouldn't have been reached because it was 6 Republican states that didn't like it. And, again, there should be more standing. There's always going to be some state that doesn't like just about any federal policy. New York or California will challenge just about any policy that they don't like that's passed by the Republicans in Congress. And Texas or, Alabama will challenge every one that the Democrats like. That's not standing. In both cases, the Supreme Court says there was standing. They reached both of them. And to some extent, it's great. We do news, and this is breaking news. This was the most predictable news. Yeah. That's broken in a while. They knew Gorsuch was going to write this opinion. They knew it was going to be 6-3 from the arguments and from the way the Supreme Court assigns cases. They knew this other one was going to come out this way too. They've already started in Congress. Remember about now Biden cannot resume the student debt under certain circumstances. That was in that package that they did so that we would pay our debt. Remember that crisis 2-3 weeks ago?
I'm flabbergasted that there's no recourse if there is not really a plaintiff, if there's not really a web designer that feels wronged, that then this ruling would be able to stand and that this is not really a real case.
Well, there are these advocacy groups. They exist both on the left as on the right. They exist for gay rights groups, right? Sure. Just like they exist for these religious organizations. This was a particularly well-organized one that brought this suit. I believe they were the same ones who brought the cake maker suit 4 or 5 years ago that got thrown out. And they obviously structured this to happen. And as I said, there is an argument that there was standing and that this was a real case in controversy, because had this web designer taken this position, they would have gone after her under the anti-discrimination laws that she was discriminating against the LGBT community. So there was an argument for that. The other thing is that they had lost in every court. So to some extent, they had a good argument against this, that it was discrimination against a protected group and it was impermissible. So they won in the district court. They won in the conservative court of appeals. The only place that the that gay rights lost was when it finally went to the Supreme Court 6-3. So it probably didn't come up, Kim, as much of an issue as maybe people would have liked in retrospect. But, once the Supreme Court, there's certainly no recourse. Once the Supreme Court says they're standing, there is a case in controversy, 6-3, like it or lump it. We're the U.S. Supreme Court. We're the supermajority that's in there because of Trump. And that's because, Kavanaugh, Barrett, Gorsuch are such predictable votes on these things. And then you add in Alito and Thomas, and even Chief Justice Roberts can't stop these results. They're going to be either 6-3 or 5-4. But gay rights and a woman's right to choose, gun rights, those things are going to lose until we have 11 or 13 members of the Supreme Court, which of course is a bill that was just introduced recently that could be done by legislation, but is of course not going to go anywhere as long as there's still a Republican House.
I was looking at reading a little more in depth about yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, and how Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, is it? Mm-hmm. And Clarence Thomas were kind of going back and forth with um, what it means to be basically Black in America, and how they were kind of really sniping at each other in a way. And I thought that was pretty interesting how they could have such different experiences.
Well, I consider what Thomas writes completely phony, because he is a huge beneficiary of affirmative action.
Right.
If he wants to prove to the nation, besides the fact that he's fair on these cases after he takes these junkets and doesn't declare them, and everything else that's wrong with him, his wife who's like sending insurrectionist stuff, and then he doesn't even recuse himself on that case and votes in a way it doesn't come out. He hits me as someone who's completely incompetent, should never have been on the Supreme Court, is really a disgrace to that institution. But if he'd like to prove, what did they used to say all the time about all of these Democrats that they didn't like? Let's see the grades. Let's see on what basis he got into Yale Law School. I think the whole nation would love to see it. And then we could say whether he's a complete hypocrite, having gotten these advantages in life by having an add-on, right? By affirmative action, and now being this big opponent of affirmative action. So what's his argument? I got here by that, and I don't believe in it. So I just totally used something I don't believe in, or it was good for me because I went up that ladder, but I don't want to see anybody else who's struggling, who's worked hard, go up the same ladder that I went up. I mean, nobody understands his argument except that he is a complete hypocrite.
His argument was that he admits he got into Yale based on these policies, but that when he graduated, because of these policies, he was still discriminated against. And so he stuck a 15-cent sticker from a piece of fruit onto his law degree saying it was worth nothing. That he felt that if he was able to get into law school based only on his transcripts and everything that he had done, that somehow that would be worth more than how he got in. So that
no
was
one
his,
knows what he's talking about. The photograph behind me is Judge John Garrett Penn. Can you still hear me? Because you went to okay. Is Judge John Garrett Penn. He was a very distinguished judge in Washington, D.C. He was the chief judge for a while. I had the huge honor to be selected as his law clerk and to work for him as a law clerk. Let's see what happened to him. He's not that different from the era of Justice Thomas, okay? People said to him, this is great that you're getting a law degree because it'll really help you. It'll give you a big leg up to get a job at the post office. Yes, that's the world of that era. But when he got into school totally on his merits, he got into every school totally on his merits. And then you're right. Thomas is right in one sense. It was hard to get a job. So what did he do? He got the job that he could get in law. He went into the JAG Corps. Then he won case after case in the JAG Corps under Eisenhower. And by the time he left the JAG Corps, it was 61 or 62. Bobby Kennedy hired him to work in the Justice Department. He got promoted because he was so terrific. And the area that he got was the South. This is before the Civil Rights Act, Kim. So he went to the South with a federal badge as a federal supervisor of tax collections for the Department of Justice Tax Division on a segregated railway car and had to drink from colored water fountains. And he appeared in federal judge. He told me the story of a federal judge who turned his chair away from him so he wouldn't look at him at all during any of his argument. Guess what? He won those cases. He did great. Okay. That's the experience that people should emulate. So if you look at that, if you look at Ketanji KBJ's history, if you look at her history too, where is the support for what he's talking about? What we should never have affirmative action because my judge managed to make it without it. Why? My judge was for affirmative action in appropriate cases because these people who say the best way to stop discriminating on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. That's what Chief Justice Roberts always says. They're blind to history. They want colorblind, but they're the blind ones. They're blind to the history that the country needs some remedies. And so for Thomas to always vote against remedies, not only for African Americans, but for Hispanic Americans who have also been disadvantaged in some ways. By the way, I want to make one comment about individualized consideration for colleges, universities, and job opportunities. You know, many Hispanics are completely bilingual. They know 2 languages. Think about that when you start to do the individualized consideration. That should give them a big break. Now, some of the Asian Americans are also bilingual. I'm bilingual myself, so you can say this is special pleading. But at the same time, I do believe that it is an intellectual advantage if I were doing the individualized consideration that someone is bilingual. So I don't see that this is going to hurt Hispanic Americans. It may help some Asian Americans, but it may disadvantage some other Asian Americans who are monolingual. But as in terms of African Americans applying, not only do some of them know other languages, but at the same time, they have had this experience that is different, okay, in this country still and based on history. And I think that's something that the decision yesterday really kind of missed. And I think that the individualized consideration, Kim, can end up being a very good thing. So I think the people were a little overwrought who acted like, oh my God, this is terrible. It wasn't good. But I think that there will be ways that institutions like the ones that got sued, Harvard and the University of North Carolina, will still have diversity. And yet these quotas or things that are like quotas are indeed unpopular. They're popular with some percent of some segment of the population, but not enough to have won 2 different ballot initiatives in California. Both times affirmative action lost. It even lost among some African Americans and some Hispanic Americans because they thought it stigmatized them. And so I think that those are my thoughts on yesterday's decision.
Well, thank you. And thank you for rushing in to talk to us about this morning's rulings and circling back to yesterday and putting everything in perspective for us. And I hope we get to see you again next week.
I'll see you next Thursday. And that's it for this term of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
It's always brutally hot in the summer. And they got in the habit of not sitting in July and August, and they don't. They also don't sit in September. First Monday in October, that's when they're back in session. During the summer, they handle all of these matters like people who want to have their case reviewed by the Supreme Court. There are hundreds and hundreds of them who are almost all rejected, and they take about 80 or 90 cases only for argument during the term.
Okay, well, we'll be watching exactly what they will consider and what's being presented and try to figure out what the next big ruling coming down may be.
Great. See you next Thursday.
Thanks, David Katz. Bye. How awesome for him to be with us for a second day in a row to talk about Supreme Court rulings, important rulings coming down today. But because of that, I'm now late, and I don't want to be late for former super producer John Daly. So in just a moment, we're going to get to Friday Fabulous Florida. Albert, why don't we do a little sweeper so I can come back and my video won't be frozen, and then we'll get on with the Florida business of the day.
What could this be? Let's look. I'm so excited. It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Is CinemaScope.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Ah, yes, it is Friday, and you know what that means. It means Friday Fabulous Florida, and I get to welcome my friend and former producer of the show. It is John Daly, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
I see you.
How you doing? And Archie, my assistant's here.
And hi, Archie. Oh, awesome. Well, thanks for being here because I don't know what I would do without you on Friday Fabulous Florida.
Well, you know you're running 8 minutes behind, so gonna have to close that Mackie mouth.
Oh, don't tell him that. Don't tell him close the Mackie mouth. Now we're in trouble. All right, let's jump right into Florida then.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
When someone dies, we don't make fun of them, right? But in this case,
we don't?
Not really. I mean, I suppose if it's a spectacular wild death, and it seems kind of like a Darwin-y kind of thing, and that's maybe what happened here. This is out of Polk County, Florida, John.
Uh-oh, you know who's the sheriff there?
Is that Grady?
Grady Judd.
Oh.
What we got here is a situation.
A suspect is dead after he fired shots at a Polk County SWAT team. You don't fire shots at the SWAT team. They returned fire, killing him on Thursday night. Sheriff Grady Judd identifying the suspect killed as 37-year-old
What he's got going
Martinez.
here is a situation.
Mr. Martinez had 16 previous felony arrests.
Of course.
A lengthy criminal history. In the process of shooting at deputies, Mr. Martinez struck Polk County SWAT team deputy Samuel Yates in the shoulder, who had to be taken to the hospital. He needed surgery also to get some shattered glass out of his face. The shooting broke out after 2 hours of negotiation. They were trying to talk Mr. Martinez down, but didn't work out. They tried to pull him over in this orange Nissan after he ran a stop sign because they believed he was under the influence. When the vehicle didn't stop, deputies started chasing it. They were about to stop the chase because it was just a traffic charges situation when they got a 911 call from a woman who said she was being held hostage. So they continued this chase for 11 miles. I guess the woman's being held hostage in the vehicle. When the car got stuck on a high rise, like a rise in the road, and lost traction, forcing the pursuit to come to an end. That is when they learned the woman being held hostage was the driver when this pursuit began. And Martinez was the passenger in the seat. So he's forcing this lady to drive like this. She was not allowed to stop. She was forced to flee from law enforcement. And so they tried to get him out of the car for hours. During that time, allegedly Martinez was smoking meth while in the car.
Allegedly, Kim.
And not complying with authorities.
Allegedly, how dare you?
He got thirsty and asked for water.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Meth heads don't usually ask for water. They usually go for like soda, like orange soda.
Orange Fanta? Yeah, no, he wanted water. He was a simple meth user. He said, can you exchange the woman in the car for water?
Can I trade this in?
That's when he opened the door.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
He threw them out a magazine full of ammunition and a handgun. Yeah, this is wrong. I mean, it goes from bad to worse. He accused the SWAT team of being the Mexican cartel and that they were after him.
Obviously.
So the meth is clearly playing, with his mind. They convinced him to let the woman out of the vehicle long enough to take him a bottle of water. They were going to give her the water so she could take it back. No, she was taken to safety. I don't think he got the water. And then he attacked. Yeah, they introduced a chemical agent to the car, and that's when Martinez started firing shots. They returned fire. He shot multiple times. It's party over for Mr. Martinez.
They introduced a chemical agent that was not meth.
That was not meth. Yet another chemical agent in the car. Yeah. So
do we have a Grady Judd quote? There's got to be a great.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, look at the. I think I saw the story. Look at the.
Yeah, there's like a 15-minute video of him talking.
Well, I think there's a quote in the story. I was looking over it.
He's incredibly erratic. Is that the quote?
No, I think Grady Judd said he wanted to go to heaven, so we made arrangements for him.
Oh, I didn't see that quote. That's Grady.
You got to hear it in his. You got to hear it in his voice.
Yeah,
he said we gave him exactly what he asked for.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, he said he wanted to go to heaven.
He always has a zing. He always has a zinger at the end.
I love Grady Judd. Oh, okay. So yeah, that is the end of Mr. Martinez. Off he goes.
Or is it? Meth is a hell of a drug.
He could be doing it in heaven. I don't know. Let's talk about this story from a man who is so, I don't know, out of his mind that he decides that he's going to shoot the pool cleaner. He thinks this person is an intruder. So this happened in Pinellas County. The person, the Florida man, his name is Jana Hocevar. She reported being startled when she saw an unknown man on her pool deck at about 9 p.m. Her husband yelled at the man, who was identified as Carl Polak, several times asking him to leave the premises. as he retrieved a gun. His wife called 911. Brady fires toward this man, Polek, as he approached the door with a flashlight, continues to fire as Polek is trying to run away. In total, 30 times he fires this weapon in about 90 seconds. Polek was struck with shrapnel from a bullet and glass. He suffers minor injuries. This man has been cleaning their pool for 6 months to a year, but they thought he was a burglar because he'd never arrived so late in the evening to perform his duties before. He was running late. He didn't call or knock on the door of their house before they entered the pool area. And so they say this man was acting lawfully within the law when he fired this weapon at the pool guy. So got to be careful in Florida when you're trying to clean the pool, I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's a bad idea to show up to someone's house in the dark without telling them, regardless. But definitely in Florida, that's a bad idea, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's dark at 9 o'clock in Florida. You would think you would, when the guy tells you who he is, you would recognize. But yeah, that went from bad to worse. There is I don't know if you saw this one. This is a former Florida police chief. He's accused of misconduct toward employees. They are now to be paid in full until they retire or he is being allowed to be paid in full until he retires in 2024. This is the former police chief in Cocoa Beach. He gets to stay on paid leave for more than a year before he retires. His name is Scott Rosenfeld. He signed an agreement with the city this week after an investigation into alleged misconduct.
Was he speeding? He got pulled over by another police officer?
No, I think it's kind of worse, although I like that story too. This guy, he was accused of yelling and bullying employees, calling employees fat, showing one of them a photo of a naked porn star, using slurs. He was, this is not the boss you were hoping for, right? He's put on paid leave last February. And now he gets to continue to be paid through the end of August of 2024 with his accrued paid time off, which is about $130,000 before taxes.
Well, he earned it, Kim.
And that will take him to his official retirement with what they say a box checked not involving misconduct. So that's how they decided to resolve this situation. These people are allowed to...
What they've got here is a situation.
He's allowed to do this stuff, and he's just
what he's got going here is a situation.
Still gets paid.
Thank you, Albert.
I'm telling you. Yeah, thank you, Albert.
That sounds like par for the course, unfortunately, with police departments.
Yeah, I guess that we don't care that he.
There's never been anything like this.
Well, I think there has.
So did you hear about this case? This is not the brightest bulb on the tree. This Florida corrections officer arrested after putting vape cartridges in the trash cans where the inmates could get to them. He's no longer a Florida corrections officer. He was arrested.
They have
Tuesday
high
night.
standards in Florida with these police chiefs and these prison guards.
This guy was arrested after caught leaving vape cartridges in trash cans accessible to inmate. He's 25 years old, so maybe it was one of his first jobs, and he thought that, you get away with it. His name is Bailey Lennon. He faces one count now of introducing contraband into a county detention facility. An inmate actually tipped off the detention facility about the possibility of Lennon providing cigarette cartridges to inmates. He said that Lennon would sneak the cartridges in and place them in the staff bathroom trash can and the trash can under his desk, which was located in the pod with the inmates. The inmate who gave the tip was able to recover a cartridge from another inmate and give it to another deputy at the facility. So the inmates are the ones who narc on this guy. He's slapped on the wrist, and then he does it again, allegedly. In June, the inmate found another cartridge, 3 cartridges, as a matter of fact. Lennon was seen on camera footage going into a staff bathroom, and after he left, they went in and found the cartridge in the trash can again.
My bad. I'm sorry.
So he wasn't counting on rats. They have rats in this prison.
He wasn't.
Snitches get stitches.
Well, in this case, snitches get arrested is what they got. So, yeah, that's it. He's now under arrest, and I don't think he's going to be working at the prison anymore. Let's talk about sharks. Baby sharks. This one wasn't a baby. This happened in the Florida Everglades. You usually are worried about alligators.
Yeah, shark in the Everglades?
Yeah. So there's video of this. This is a man in a white hoodie. He's bending
Wait, white
down.
Hoodie or a white hood?
No, hoodie. He's bending down to rinse off his hands in the water by his boat. When all of a sudden, someone says, "I wouldn't put your hands in there." And the shark grabs him and pulls him into the water. Do you see that? We have to see it again. He's trying to rinse off his hands. That's it. You're in. Yes.
Yeah. Shark's like, I'll help you. I'll help you rinse your hand off.
Someone off screen tells the guy, "I wouldn't put your hands in there," but he argues, 2 seconds isn't going to do anything, and he proceeds to put his hands in the water. All of a sudden screams, yanks his hands out of the water with a shark attached. There's a few seconds of struggle, a little bit of blood from his hand seen hitting the side of the boat as the man falls overboard, quickly gets back into the boat. The incident seems to be over at that point. The man is apparently rushed to park rangers, who then airlift him to the hospital. He says, "Today is one of the scariest days on the water I ever had. It started off great. We were
There's
crushing
never
the
been
fish.
anything like this.
It wasn't a scary day on the water.
The fishing was great. The sharks were eating some despite our best efforts." He's quoted as saying, "After releasing a snook, Nick washed his hands in the water and was immediately bit by a large lemon shark. There was no chum or blood in the water, and the sharks were unprovoked. They say in the Everglades, sharks are no joke."
Do you really need a reminder not to go in the water in Florida?
I mean, between the alligators and the sharks, and I guess you wouldn't have to remind me.
See, the key word there was on. A great day on the water.
Yeah, not in the water. Apparently, they say shark bites are extremely uncommon in Everglades National Park, but we always recommend,
because most people aren't putting their hands in the water. That's why they're rare.
We recommend visitors take precautions around wildlife. Right? Don't put your hands in the water.
Right now it's mating season, and they're hungry.
You know what you do? You bring hand sanitizer.
Oh man, yeah.
Come on.
That's great video, though. I mean, that guy just got yanked in big time. Don't put your hands in the water in the Everglades. Don't do it.
The shark was like, he's not going to do that. Oh my God, he is going to do that.
Yeah. Let's go to Volusia County. Why don't we? This pervy guy, hopefully he'll be away for a while and not able to do this. But there's this man.
Is this the sheriff?
No, this is just some.
What he's got going here is a situation.
This man reportedly touched himself in front of multiple people, including 3 girls aged 14 or under.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
Ron gets it.
He's caught on body camera, police body camera.
That's not why it's called body camera.
No. It says, "Don't do what Nolan did," this man Nolan Hernandez, "or you could end up featured here too." Mr. Nolan Hernandez, he's 26, booked in jail on lewd and lascivious exhibition in the presence of a child, and then featured on the body cam footage. They posted it and said, "Don't do this, or you could be like this guy." So, let's go to this story, because this is not a friend. I'm sorry, it really isn't. The Florida man steals a friend's car, runs from police, and hides while a canine and a helicopter search for him. This happened in Orlando.
No.
Yes. Can you believe it?
Wait, is this Fox 35 and the Fox 35 Thunder Truck?
It is not. No.
Oh, okay.
This is from CBS 12 in Orlando.
Oh, okay.
They have this guy who already has 2 active warrants out for his arrest. And he decides it's a great opportunity to flee from police in a stolen car, hide under a trailer in a resident's backyard. But the canines track him down, the police canines. The helicopter scouts him too. Finally, he's arrested. he had a medical emergency. I wonder if that had to do with the canines, requiring a hospital visit. His name is David Lee Grisham. He's 41. He was arrested by the Brevard County Sheriff's Office in the early morning hours.
You know where that is, Kim.
Is it by the Whole Foods, John Daly? Yes. His friend loaned him, he says, a Ford Ranger, which was never returned. After a few days of trying to reach the man, the friend went home and was met with Grisham holding a firearm, who said, "You're not getting your car back, and you're not allowed to leave."
Wow.
Grisham apparently steals the friend's car. There are also multiple personal items of the man in the car, a laptop, an iPad, two different medications.
Crack pipe.
The next day, after the friend reports his vehicle missing to the Cocoa Police Department, the guy is spotted in the vehicle driving it. And so that's where this all plays out. Guy was chased by police, then he ditches the car, and then he flees on foot. He said, the police say he was found hiding like a scared kitty cat under a trailer. He was drug out from beneath the trailer, arrested by deputies, complaining of chest pains, taken to the hospital, but eventually booked into the Brevard County Jail with a $54,000 bond amount.
That sounded like Grady Judd. See, I think they're learning from him.
I think they are too. Yeah. And lastly, and this one is kind of a sad situation, I think. And it's, again, an animal story about people mistreating animals. It's a young Florida man charged with animal cruelty for using a baby gator to shotgun a twisted tea.
What?
Wait,
do we have Oprah?
Tried to,
What?
It's trying to make this baby alligator drink booze. The guy is now charged with animal cruelty after this video is posted of him on social media. It was taken in a Plant City parking lot, the Hardee's parking lot, and it shows a group of teenagers handling a juvenile alligator very roughly. One of them uses an alligator's teeth to puncture a can of Arizona Twisted Tea. Shotgun the alcoholic beverage with the young reptile still clamped on to the can. So the authorities say the lack of respect and responsibility shown toward this animal was disappointing to see, and that this serves as a strong reminder of the consequence of such behavior. Tampa station WFLA showed the video to the wildlife rescue and rehab folks. They say this has got to stop. This teen basically used this reptile as a drink holder, then dropped it onto the hot parking lot pavement. The gator seems stunned. Normally a little alligator about that size, when he hit the ground, should have hit it running, but it didn't. The gator, apparently they say, might have been abused prior to the beginning of the video. In my opinion, says this animal expert, everyone they have on that video that touched that alligator needs to be brought in front of a judge. The alligator was released relatively unharmed to a nearby retention pond. And they're hoping it stays away from teenagers in the future. But what a scumbag that kid is.
I'm not a huge fan of gators, but I hope he remembers their faces, because he's going to get bigger, and maybe he'll come back someday.
I think they should always get a little creative with the punishments with these kind of acts. Like, they return the juvenile gator to a retention pond. They should also put the people back in also a retention pond.
Right.
Everyone into the pond.
Maybe start with the hands. Okay, everybody, wash your hands.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, you wonder, though, what's going through the kid's mind. Does he just think he's being cool?
Yeah. Instagram.
Yeah. I guess. What a little scumbag.
I mean, he goes to Hardee's for lunch, so obviously he's cool.
And that, my friends, is Friday Fabulous Florida.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now, here.
Well, John Daly and Albert and folks in the chat, it is time to pick a favorite. So, a quick recap. The Florida man smoking meth who opens fire on the SWAT team, and they open fire on him. He doesn't survive it. The pool cleaner who doesn't call and arrives at 9 at night. He's also facing a barrage of gunfire there, but he manages to walk away from it. The Florida man who is accused of misconduct by employees, the sheriff, who is now allowed to be paid for a full year, even despite the allegations of misconduct. The man arrested after putting cartridges in the inmates' trash cans, who is a corrections official. The shark grabbing the hand and pulling the man into the boat. We have the man who was touching himself and now featured on video in perpetuity saying, "Don't end up like this guy." And then we have the man who steals the friend's car, runs from police, and is pulled out from underneath a boat trailer, hiding like a little kitty. And then we have the young Florida man charged with animal cruelty for using a baby gator basically to hold his drink. What do you think, John Daly?
This is a tough week. I would say the guy hiding like a little kitty, and the first one, the guy on meth who shot at the SWAT team.
Yeah.
Since it comes down to those two, I have to go with Grady Judd because of his quote.
Okay.
Albert, do you still have that? What did he say? He wanted to go to heaven.
I made the arrangements.
He had it coming to him, and
so we made the arrangements. So I'm going to go with Grady Judd.
Albert, what do you think?
So I'd like before I have my choice, I'd like to also recap my because there's a process that I had. There's process protocols and standards for me to come up with the Florida segment. Florida was kind of dark this week, so
yeah. This
anytime
is like Dateline.
I do research for Florida, I try to find good stories that don't say children in it. So
yeah.
Unfortunately, when you're looking at Florida stories, you see these horrible stories. I got the I got the quote here. He said he wanted to go to heaven. We made the arrangements for it.
Yeah.
That was pretty good for the first story. So I think I'll go for the first story too, because
I think I'm going to go with the folks in the chat with the don't wash your hands in the water. The shark is going to get you. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that one has 72% of the vote right now in the poll. So
is that the electoral vote or the popular vote?
Yeah, we're gonna have to set. We got to send it to the Electoral College to figure.
But Albert's right. Like when I produce this segment, you have to throw out like maybe half of the stories.
Yeah.
Because they're just
it's those terrible stories
messed up,
this week.
like
so I had to kind of dig a little bit. The past few weeks have been kind of easy, but
yeah.
Eric says the shark was the least repulsive. So at least it was the shark, I don't know, not being abused, but abusing us, not us abusing them. Mark Thompson popping in saying, "Nice job curating Friday Fabulous Florida, Albert." So you got a little props from Mark there.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
It looks like from the chat that most people are did you just give yourself the rod of equity and mercy?
No, it's just showing off that I do have that kind of powers.
You're gonna get in trouble.
I'm the guy who travels with the Stanley Cup, who has the white gloves. I just go to these random events. So
I didn't realize security was so lax when Mark's gone.
I know, it's a shocker. I think in the chat most people are going
Receive the royal scepter.
Now you're in real trouble. That's it.
Receive the royal scepter.
Thank you, Albert, for all the great Florida stories today. And John Daly, thank you for being here as well. It's always fun to do that with you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Friday Fabulous Florida, everybody.
Oh, I hit the end earlier.
Oh, is that already done? Okay. Well, let's move on.
So let's just get to some news, and then we have Jim Avila to talk. There's a lot going on today in politics land. So let's do it.
Let's do a little bit of news, and then I think we're running just a little behind. So let's do a little news, and then we'll get to Jim Avila. Michael Shure has the day off, so we'll talk politics with Jim Avila here on the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There it is. On On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards. The Supreme Court says President Biden exceeded his authority with his plan to forgive student loan debt. Court ruling the program was an unlawful exercise of presidential power because it had not been approved by Congress. Biden's plan struck down by a vote of 6-3. President Biden will announce new actions to offer relief to student loan borrowers today. This coming after the Supreme Court blocking his plan. President Biden called the Supreme Court decision unthinkable. AAA is expecting more than 50 million Americans to travel at least 50 miles away from home over the 4th of July weekend. AAA saying in a release that it believes this weekend's travel will break the record of 49 million travelers in 2019. The association predicts more than 43 million Americans will travel by car, and that would also be a record. Moms for Liberty holding a summit in Philadelphia this weekend. The top GOP presidential candidates are scheduled to speak at this summit. Organizations against the group say they plan to protest outside the summit all weekend long. New York Post reporting ESPN is laying off about 20 on-air personalities. Among those reportedly being let go, longtime NBA commentators Jalen Rose and Jeff Van Gundy. Both Rose and Van Gundy have been with ESPN since 2007. Yeah, cost-cutting measures. No one is immune. Pop star Olivia Rodrigo's first new single in 2 years is among today's new music releases. Lucinda Williams also put out her highly anticipated album, Stories from a Rock and Roll Heart, which she apparently has the single from the new Barbie soundtrack on it. It's called Speed Drive. The Weeknd released 2 more songs for the 5th and final episode of his controversial HBO show, The Idol. I started watching that one and I just couldn't do it.
There is a K-pop idol in that too, so it's getting a lot of views just for having a Blackpink member in that. And also, Olivia Rodrigo is half Filipino, so us Filipinos, we claim all of them. So,
you know, what I wanted to tell you, Albert, speaking of K-pop music, is that I was talking to Pat Thurston the other day, and she is totally into K-pop music, and it's all because of you.
I know it started with me, and last time she was on the show, I think she did mention it. So I think if you just look up our, I'm sure there's not anybody who wants to look that up, but if you want to look at, there's a breakout video of her last appearance on talking with Mark here, and I thought we are gonna have her sometime this week, but maybe we could get her on in the near future. Kim, that's like one of your easy contacts.
Yes, it is. Maybe we'll try to get her on Monday. Yeah. I do want to give you this piece of news as well, because Alan Arkin has passed away. Academy or award-winning actor Alan Arkin is dead at the age of 89. His sons confirmed his death in a statement to People magazine. Arkin won an Oscar for his work in the movie Little Miss Sunshine. He starred in a number of memorable films, including Catch-22. Alan Arkin, again, has passed away at the age of 89. Passing, but also a birth in the news as well, because Naomi Campbell is welcoming her second child to the world at the age of 53. The runway model uploaded a photo of her new son on social media saying it's never too late to become a mother. I would argue that's not the case, and called her new baby a true gift from God. Campbell had her first child, a daughter, in 2021 and hasn't revealed much about the child, but now she's got 2 and she's got a new baby.
There's never been anything like this.
Didn't say whether it was a surrogate. She said she did not adopt the baby. So I don't know how that worked out, but yeah, she's a new mom again. So congratulations to Naomi Campbell. And this report is sponsored by the beautiful, wonderful people at Tenuta Vineyards, home of the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red? The best wine you'll find, and you can get 10% off. All you have to do is call them and say, smash it with your iron rod, and you too can get 10% off of your purchase. So mash it with your iron rod. It's a 10% discount for you, and the phone number is 925-699-4576. Call Rich, say smash it with your iron rod, and get your Why Are You Yelling Red? I have not heard from anyone that has purchased this wine, and I think a lot of you have, that it's somehow disappointing. It's really good. And of course, they've got 14 whites, 14 reds to choose from. They have a white too. I always talk about the why are you yelling red, but they have, hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio, which I like more of a red wine drinker myself. So that's kind of where I go. And of course, Mark and Courtney were just at Tenuta Vineyards, and they said it was really the most wonderful times. You can go out to the winery, you can hang out, you can become friends.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Proprietors, and you can walk through the vineyards and explore Tenuta Winery for yourself. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
It is time to talk to Jim Avila. Of course, Jim Avila, formerly with ABC, now a super special columnist with the Barrett Media. I always love to see what you write on Barrett. And excited to talk politics with you as well. Welcome, Jim Avila.
Good morning, Kim. Kind of a slow day.
Yeah, right. So we've
in politics.
Talked a little bit about these Supreme Court rulings, but I want to talk about them with you as well. What's your take on? Let's first start with the student loan forgiveness being axed there.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing articles already about all these people who have these student loans, including my daughter still has some that I pay, but they're already going in having to fix their personal budgets.
Yeah,
you know, they for now 3 years have not had to pay the student loans, and now they're going to have a big chunk of their salary going to pay these again, and they're having to readjust. You know, they're going to have to cut back on things, and it's a real hardship for people who just wanted an education. And it really is a sign that the only thing that the Republicans really control is the Supreme Court. Yeah. And the Supreme Court is now legislating from the Supreme Court itself, and is turning our country back into the 1950s. The affirmative action ruling was quite detrimental to minorities in colleges. You know, before affirmative action, all these colleges were lily white. I mean, Harvard was, you know, and there's been considerable progress because of affirmative action in making these colleges a more diverse place. In California, you know, UCs have already eliminated that, and they've been pretty successful on keeping the diversity by other programs. And hopefully, and you know, I saw the guy from University of Michigan who's been doing it as well. University of Michigan has also eliminated affirmative action, and they've not been as successful, but UCs have been. So there has to be a concerted effort to change to keep the rules so that you know, so that African Americans especially can, and Latinos here in this state can get their educations that can lift them out of the situations that they've been born into. You know, I've always said that immigrants came here because they wanted to. You know, Latinos have come here because they wanted to be here, or
right.
They were here already, and California went from being Mexico to being the United States. Yeah. So they were here. They want to be here. African Americans did not necessarily want to be here. They were forced to be here, and you know, to all of a sudden, as the Supreme Court Justice Brown, Katina Brown, said, to wave a wand and say all of a sudden that there is no discrimination, which is what the Supreme Court said, is living in a fantasy world. You can't do that by fiat, you know, and it's really a sad day as we continue to turn back. Again, there's another ruling today on whether or not an internet company needs to service gays. Well, what's next? Is a service that it's against my religion to serve Latinos? It's against my religion to serve Jews? You know, this type of stuff. You know, you can't be allowed to discriminate that way, and the Supreme Court is saying yes, you can.
Yeah, you
And
can.
it's really,
If God tells you to, you can. That's what they say, right? In the
yeah,
name
and
of religion, which, yeah. I think,
it's
doesn't
just,
religion
you know,
say don't
what do we do?
discriminate? Doesn't religion say, judge lest not ye be judged? I mean, how come we're judging now? And how come that's okay? That's not religion.
Yeah, I mean, these people don't ask what Jesus would do,
No.
because if you believe in the Jesus that's in the Bible, he ministered to the poor, he washed their feet, he did these things that showed that he had compassion.
Right.
And I interviewed Governor Abbott one time. This was maybe 6-7 years ago in Texas. I went down there in Austin, and for NBC, I was covering the border, and he was doing things like sending, like he's still doing, sending the military down to guard the border. And I asked him straight up, I said, you claim to be a Christian. Where's your compassion? And he really didn't have an answer for it. And
No.
these people, they pick and choose what they believe,
Yeah.
as far as Christianity. And I'm not a Christian. I don't really have a religion. I'm really against organized religion. I think it's the root of most of our problems and causes most wars, and really has been a problem in the world. But if you decide you're going to be, then act it. Don't just say it. Act it.
You mentioned the affirmative action ruling that came down yesterday. And I've heard people say, well, it served a purpose when we needed it, but now we don't need it anymore. Things are better now. You look at schools and you have diversity at college campuses, and we really don't need this anymore. It's time for it to go.
But why do you have diversity in universities now? Oops.
Oh.
Are we going to review a movie?
We're not going to know. It's not time. We'll do them. We'll have them on in just a little bit, but no, not yet. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The universities have diversity because there's been affirmative action.
Right.
And if you go, the problem is that these judges don't get into the world. Let's go down to South Central Los Angeles. Let's go to Hunters Point. Let's go to places in Oakland. And let's look at the schools there and the differences in what these kids who are growing up in minority neighborhoods have to work with versus what they have to work with here in Beverly Hills, where I live, or over the hill in the valley in Studio City, where the schools have computers labs and all those things that give an advantage to white Americans. The privilege that is there is an unfair advantage, and you have to make up for that privilege, in my opinion. And the way you make up for that privilege is you give a boost to the minority population, especially, in my opinion, African Americans, and to some degree Latinos as well, because they were brought here against their will. And we still have an obligation. Yes, it's been 150 years since slavery, but it's only been 25 years since civil rights. It's a process, and it's not finished yet. It really isn't. When the opportunities for education in minority neighborhoods are really difficult.
I would argue it's like saying racism is over in America, that, we've achieved economic equality and everything's fine. No need to make sure that people can get good jobs and good educations because we're all equal now and it's okay. When you see story after story every day about, Black people trying to sell their home, but it's considered worth much less than a white person's home, because when the person who was coming in to set the price walks in, they see pictures of a Black family on the wall. And so, there's racism still rampant all over the place. So how can we say that affirmative action has served its purpose? We're not done yet.
What we often hear from MAGA is that we had a Black president.
Right.
Everything's okay. Well, it's not. It's not okay. And yes, some things have improved, but the living conditions of the African American community remain troubled. And the schools in Mississippi, where this population is 60% black in those rural schools. They're terrible, and so they need affirmative action to give them a boost. Clarence Thomas admits that he was there at Yale because of affirmative action, and yet he wants to limit that for others. He claims he's ashamed that he had to use affirmative action to get into Yale, and it diminished his degree. Well, I would ask, does it diminish your degree if you're one of the privileged who goes in on a legacy admission to one of these schools, which has not been stopped and should be stopped? But these legacy admissions don't come out with a diploma and feel ashamed of it, and neither should affirmative action folks. They went through and they had to get the grades when they got there. They got an opportunity to get in, and I really resent the way that some have used the Asian community. The Asian community was part of the action, a small part of the Asian community. This part of it was used in the action that was brought to the Supreme Court, and this small part of the Asian community claiming that they can't get a fair shake because they get the grades but they can't get in. There's a wide range of opportunities, and I really think that those in the Asian community who feel that way, and I think it's a small part, should rethink that a bit. Just like the rest. If they should be praised for their hard work and for their good grades and what they've been able to accomplish. But they don't have, I'm sorry to say, they've had some problems, but they don't have they weren't slaves. Mm-hmm. Some would argue that in California, they were almost slaves when they built the railroads and things, but they've gone beyond that, I think. And, to compare for any minority, even Latinos, and I'm half Latino, half Mexican, for us to compare our plight to what the African Americans went through is not really recognizing reality. None of us was brought here on ships in the holds of ships and treated the way that they were, sold as humans. Just terrible.
I was reading this article on CNN, Van Jones saying this court is not my friend, and I look at what the court has done in the three recent decisions and how they really haven't come down in favor of people who need a hand up, people who are kind of more toward the bottom half of society and might need some help in being lifted up. I think, and I know the Supreme Court is looking at the Constitution and the law, and it's not their job to be political, one could say, and help the common man. But when you look at the decisions, I think Van Jones is right. The Supreme Court really isn't the friend of people who need help, at least right now.
Well, when you look at the makeup, is Brett Kavanaugh the type of guy who's going to really want to help the poor? I mean, he is the epitome of the white privileged class. John Roberts, the epitome of Amy, whatever her name is, Barrett. She also, they're members of a privileged class, and while some in the past some of these justices in the past have in fact tried to help the poor and have had empathy, I don't see much empathy in the Supreme Court, and it's really a shame. And it's the only branch of government where the Republicans really have total control in a 6-3 majority. And we're seeing the results of it. They're governing from a place that's not supposed to be a place that governs. They're supposed to be balls and strikes callers, and instead they have an agenda. And I was listening to President Biden in his interview with Nicole Wallace, and he has no ambition or to change the court, to pack the court, to put more members on the court, change it from what it is to 15 members instead of the 9 that it is now. He doesn't think that's productive. So I don't really know what we can do until these because the justices who are conservative are quite young. They're going to be around for a while. So it's really a problem. What has to happen, I guess, is we have to get super majorities of Democrats in both the House and the Senate so that they can pass laws like the student loan law and get it passed so that it can't be overturned.
I was looking at upcoming cases that the Supreme Court has, and one of them that they agreed today to hear is this question of whether domestic abusers are subject to protective orders that don't allow them to possess guns. So they're going to look at whether people that are involved in domestic violence cases are allowed to have a gun. The case is United States v. Zaki Rahimi, which is apparently this case that's considered to be pretty controversial, that will clarify the Second Amendment ruling the court made last year. So they issued this new standard ruling for the constitutionality of gun laws in a case last year, which overturned a New York law that barred people from carrying a handgun without a license. Under the law, New York could deny a license to applicants who failed to prove that they faced a specific threat. But the ruling, issued and written by Clarence Thomas, supported the court's 5 other conservatives, which said the law infringed on the right to bear arms. So I'm worried the next ruling from this court might be, doesn't matter whether you're accused of domestic violence or not, they can't take your gun away from you. And what we know about people that are involved in mass shootings is that almost always there's some type of domestic violence in their past. So these are people that likely should have their weapons taken away. And I worry that that's not going to happen here.
Well, we already know what this court thinks about the protecting women. So I don't think there's much chance that this ruling will go the correct way. The whole Second Amendment argument. Nobody's saying let's take away all guns. Except for maybe me. But most of the time, people are saying, let's regulate. And there really isn't anything in the Constitution that says we can't regulate guns. People have, according to the Second Amendment, well-regulated militias do have a right to have weapons. The guy next door or the guy walking down my street here in Los Angeles with a gun is not a well-regulated militia.
No.
That interpretation is just over the top. But until we get enough votes to overcome Manchin and Simona in the Democratic Party, we have to have a bigger majority. We have to have, first of all, a majority that shuts down a 16-vote majority that would shut down filibusters. That's what is holding things up. There is a chance, I think, the Republican Party is burying itself so much in their policies which are not in step with what most Americans believe. I still believe that there's a hardcore 35 to 40% of these hardcore right-wing GOP, and then the rest, the remaining part of the GOP and the independents and the Democrats, which outnumber Republicans anyway, are enough, if we're motivated, to win the presidency and win a majority in 2024. The problem, where we're at right now, is because of apathy and stupidity in 2016.
That's our downfall, isn't it? Apathy and stupidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
When people just said, well, what does it matter? Trump's, what's the worst that could happen? Well, we saw what the worst is.
Yeah.
And we're living it right now.
And wasn't it worse than we ever even imagined? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton was not the best candidate in the world, but our world would be so much different if the apathetic voters and some in the very far left wing of the Democratic Party who couldn't stomach voting for Hillary Clinton gave us instead Donald Trump, who is on a mission to ruin this country. I mean, he's if you look at what he's ranting now, and I try not to look at it because it's just so disturbing.
Yeah.
The things that he's saying now on his Truth Social about, this is a war And he's trying to incite an actual civil war. And when he loses, we need to be ready for that. I don't mean physically, but the government needs to be ready for that to protect its citizens. And if the right wing thinks that they and their guns, their handguns, are going to take on the government's F-16s and tanks, they're out of their minds. It's not going to, that's just going to be a bloodbath, and they need not to do that. And I'm hoping that some semblance of, first of all, I'm hoping that Trump goes to jail, and before he goes to jail, that him going to jail will in fact eliminate the danger of this civil war happening, and instead they'll have a more reasonable Republican candidate. I think DeSantis is kind of falling apart, and I'm not sure that he's going to be the guy. So, but it may be a more reasonable Republican candidate who, if they lose, don't go crazy. It's really we're in a sad place in some ways, and I hate to feel so. Usually, I'm pretty optimistic, but today these Supreme Court rulings have really made me a bit angry.
And that's what I kind of want to talk to you about. We'll wrap it up after this, but you talked about stupidity and apathy. And I'm looking at this headline saying conservatives are on a roll in their quest to remake America through the courts. I wonder if you think the Roe v. Wade ruling, the affirmative action ruling, the it's okay to discriminate as long as God says it's okay ruling, and the ruling about student loans, is that enough to shake us out of this apathy, to get us to the polls? What's it going to take for America to stand up? I mean, last time, I think, when President Biden won, it was oh my God, look what just happened with President Trump. That was enough to shake us out of it. Do we have something now with all these rulings and what's happening in America that's able to motivate people to get to the polls as well?
Well, I think yes. I think Roe versus Wade showed in 2022 motivated women, and I think women are still motivated and are still angry at the Republican Party. And, I don't want to speak for women, you can, but, I don't think women want their bodies controlled by men. I don't think they want their medical decisions. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, we don't want our bodies controlled by anyone except ourselves. We don't even want our doctor telling us what to do. We want to make the decision, with the good information from a medical professional, but we want to make the decision.
Right. And I think that still holds, and I think all that has to be is reminded. But I think, I said this in 2022, the women I know don't forget, and they're not going to easily forget what has happened here. So I think, first of all, they have motivated women through the Roe versus Wade. Yeah. They've now motivated young people through student loans. The student loan position of the Democrats of the Republicans is pushing away young voters. Not that they had them in the first place, but I think young people will be motivated again to come out. Old people are going to be motivated by the fact that Republicans continue to vote against insulin protections, limits on threats to the Social Security, threats to Medicare. Those type of things are motivating Democrats and independents. And I think this new gun stuff is also going to motivate, especially women. How do you send you do this? How do you send your child to school every day? I mean, it would scare me to death, nowadays to send your child to school, especially in these states where guns are not regulated and where everybody can just go buy an AR-15. It's ludicrous. It's crazy. So yes, I do have still hope that independent. And then we have also, Kim, Trump's going to be if not in jail, he's going to have to reach some kind of agreement with the U.S. government. And part of that agreement is going to be, and my prediction is that he'll reach a settlement with the U.S. government not to run again, possibly some kind of house arrest or ankle bracelet or something like that. I don't think that we're going to put a president in prison. I just don't think we're going to do that. But I think there's going to be an agreement that gets him out of the voting, out of the electorate. And that's going to really make a big difference in this country. So those combination of factors Plus, the economy is doing pretty well. There's more jobs than ever. That we're beginning to see an increase in the incomes, in wages. So, and inflation is down. Gas is down in the 4s again, and I see some places in the Midwest it's in the 3s again.
Yeah.
So I think things are turning the Democrats' way. The only issue, in my point, I know you got to wrap up. The only issue that really is troubling to me is Biden's age and his health. I hesitate to say it because I like the guy.
Yeah.
I think he's done a good job, but I wish he would just do what he said he was going to do, was be a transition president, step into history as a guy who brought us back into, from Donald Trump, and let the next generation do it. It's not going to happen, I guess, unless he gets ill.
Don't you think that leaves too many question marks, though? I mean, here we have a sitting president who has shown that he's able to have success, who's shown that he's able to do the job. And that may be what we need when you're looking at someone like Trump coming back for his job. I wonder and worry that if it was a younger candidate who is untested and unproven, if we wouldn't be in as good of a position to keep the presidency.
Well, I think there's a wide range of candidates that are out there that can, if they have enough time. So if Biden was able to do that this summer or fall, give another candidate, give us some primaries where we saw some good candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are people: Sherrod Brown, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom. Those are some pretty heavyweight candidates that I think deserve a chance, and would be a good to have them, see them on the debate stage. I see how they do. Look, I like Joe Biden. He wasn't my favorite candidate because I'm more of a progressive, but I think he's done a great job, but I think he is showing some signs of his age, and I worry not so much about tomorrow. What I really worry about is another 4 years. What is it going to be like in midterms in 2026? That, and if something really tragic happens, then we have Kamala Harris, who is a bit untested and who hasn't gone through the primary system and hasn't been elected for that faction.
I was just reading a poll about her likability yesterday, and it's so that almost half of Americans are giving her a thumbs down. So I mean, when you look at Joe Biden's presidency, do you have to consider her and go, there's a real possibility that she could have to step in.
Right. I like her. But I think I am, if not in a minority, there's half of Democrats who don't like her, and I don't really understand why they don't like her.
I don't either.
I would prefer that what I'm talking about, and I would prefer if Joe Biden stepped aside, maybe endorsed her if he wants to, but then she has to go through the system again of a primary fight against people who are quite strong. I mean, I think if Gavin Newsom was able to attack the homeless the homeless issue is going to kill Gavin Newsom unless he gets that fixed. And right now he has until 2028 to fix it, because that's probably when he's going to run for president. But if Joe Biden steps down, then he's got a real problem right now. But people like Amy Klobuchar, who is a moderate, well-spoken, tested in the Senate, those type of people will shine. Sherrod Brown will shine. There are other governors in the country who are Democrats. The guy in Illinois, from the Hyatt fortune, is a guy who could be helpful. So I think, but Joe Biden's got to do the right thing, in my opinion. And I don't, the trap being president when he's wanted to be president all of his life. I mean, since he was in his 40s, he's run for president.
Yeah.
It's hard for him to step down after he finally got it, or step aside.
Are you talking about J.B. Pritzker?
Yes, Pritzker.
Yeah. Okay. Jim Avila, thank you for coming. I could talk to you all day long, really, honestly, about politics and everything else. I love your thoughts on things, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Hopefully, you'll come back on Monday if you can. I know Mark is off, and I'll talk to you about it, but I would love to continue talking to you about politics on Monday as well if you're around.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
Take
you, Jim.
care. Good seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Jim Avila for being on the show. I am late, and I don't want to be late for Michael Snyder, who's talks about all things movies. Of course, he's got an article in the Marina Times, and he comes on a rainbow. Michael Snyder, welcome to the Mark Thompson Show.
Well, happy 4th of July weekend, Kim, and also Albert, and obviously all of our lovely audience. Enjoy your independence, everybody. That is, unless you're totally reliant on someone else, then I wish you a happy Dependence Day. I'm excited for Mark and Courtney. They're still on the Fredo Corleone tour of Tahoe.
They are, yes, indeed.
If you follow Mark's IG account, you'll know it was apparently Mark's fictional murder mystery Monday on a Thursday this week, as he and Courtney went by the area of scenic Lake Tahoe, where Fredo was betrayed by his brother Michael in The Godfather Part 2. And I hear Courtney spent a good portion of the vacation interviewing potential witnesses to Fredo's death. I could be wrong. We'll find out next week, I think.
So we've got 4th of July weekend upon us, and usually that means pretty big blockbusters coming our way. You know, I think in the years past, you've seen Will Smith with Independence Day and some big hits at the box office. Is that what we're looking at this time?
Well, we have one monster movie opening, and we should really address it. You know, more than 40 years after the release of the initial Indiana Jones movie, which was 1981's near perfect Raiders of the Lost Ark, we have a fifth and presumably final installment in the beloved adventure series. It is in theaters. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny catches up with relic hunting archaeologist Henry Walton Indiana Jones Jr. We learned in the third movie, that he was in fact a junior. His father, played by Sean Connery in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. We know him as Indy because we're his friends. And anyway, on the eve of his retirement from academia, we encounter him. And as before, the fedora-wearing, whip-wielding Dr. Jones is played by Harrison Ford, who may now be a craggy 80-year-old, but is still the same charismatic superstar he's been since his earliest screen appearances. And fortunately, Dial of Destiny, directed by James Mangold, the guy that did the movie Logan, which was about the final days of Wolverine, the X-Man. This guy has done a good job here. Dial of Destiny is a satisfying wrap on Indy's 4-decade story. So I don't want to spoil much, but I will say that a prologue set near the end of World War II launches Dial of Destiny in, I'd call it rousing fashion, as a digitally and believably de-aged Ford and Indy's friend and colleague Basil Shaw, played by Toby Jones, vie with Nazi scientist Jürgen Voller, played by the great Scandinavian actor Mads Mikkelsen, for a mysterious artifact known as the Antikythera. I mean, there's always a MacGuffin in the Indiana Jones movies that triggers the exotic expedition. We had the Ark of the Covenant in the first. We had some sort of sacred Sanskrit stones in the second. We had the Holy Grail in the third and the Crystal Skull in the fourth. And now we have the Antikythera, which is better known as the Archimedes Dial. Anyway, that's exciting stuff. That fades to black after an extended chase sequence on a careening train behind enemy lines. We catch up with a dispirited Jones in 1969. At the end of the previous film, the Crystal Skull movie, he married his longtime love, Marion Ravenwood, and it turns out that he had a son with her. And but now we see him as miserable in a shabby New York City walk-up apartment. And we don't know what's happened, but his life then is further upended by agents under the direction of Voller, who is now working for NASA. And it's kind of a Werner von Braun style thing, where a kind of cleaned up Nazi comes to America and helps out the space program. But this Voller character is continuing to pursue the Antikythera, and Voller's goons ransack Indy's office and living quarters. And at this point, Shaw's daughter, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge of TV's Fleabag, enters the fray. But we don't know if she's a friend or foe to Indy, who happens to be her godfather. But can he get up for one last quest that will take him on a danger-fraught journey from a Manhattan ticker tape parade for the Apollo 11 astronauts to a diving expedition in the Mediterranean as he strives to preserve history? Even when things get preposterous, because the script was credited to 4 writers and it's literally all over the map, director Mangold keeps things moving at a brisk clip, and Ford, in tandem with Waller-Bridge, they have such a wry, mischievous interaction that they close the deal. This is definitely a step up from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the 4th movie, which was a disappointment to many. And I will be straight up about it. The actor's true age, Ford being 80, brings genuine gravitas. And, of course, the occasional wince of pain to this indomitable figure who manages to save the day once more. Spoiler alert, Indy saves the day.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed watching this.
Okay.
If this is his retirement, it was well earned. I mean, Dr. Jones, of course. I can't imagine Ford retiring too soon.
What did you think of you said he was digitally altered to look younger?
Yes, and I bought it more here than any previous use of de-aging. And in fact, they do it twice. They also check in with him again sometime after the end of World War II, but previous to this 1969 setting. And it's tweaked, and I bought it. And it's amazing how vital he seems as the younger Indiana Jones. It's not like teenage Indy. I was into it. And,
do you think is this movie going to be like the box office, smash that gets all the money this weekend?
I hope it does well. I have to say, honestly, none of the films have touched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like I said earlier, it is a perfect film, script by Lawrence Kasdan, directed by Steven Spielberg, who went on to direct the other 3 movies that followed it and is not on board as the director here, but is a producer. But James Mangold knows what he's doing, and the action sequences really rock. And Ford is he's wonderful. He was born to play the character. He is Indiana Jones. And the dialogue here is terse and witty, and the characterization of the invariably courageous Jones, the button-down archaeology professor and part-time swashbuckler, still wonderful.
You got me all pumped up to see this movie. That's awesome.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Let's move on to the Teenage Kraken movie.
All right. Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, is a new feature film from DreamWorks Animation, the studio behind the Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, and How to Train Your Dragon movie franchises. As potential franchises go, Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken probably won't approach the heights of those others. Look, it's not terrible. It's not great. There are a couple of lively action sequences here with a few laughs from snappy dialogue delivered by a game cast with a couple big names. I wasn't particularly fond of the animation, which pretty much looks like it came out of the rubbery, rounded Cal Arts style that became flavor of the decade via its use in well-regarded Cartoon Network shows like Adventure Time and Steven Universe. This is an overt and literal fish-out-of-water coming-of-age movie about the Gilmans, a nuclear family in a royal line of mythical sea creatures. So the Gilmans are living on land in a charming oceanside town and passing as human, despite being blue and having kind of finny ears. So teenage daughter Ruby, voiced by Lana Condor, wants to go to prom with her crush, a skateboard riding good guy, but her mom, voiced by Toni Collette, fears that the family's secret will be revealed since apparently puberty may well trigger the girl's transformation into a gigantic kraken, which would undermine the Gilmans' assimilation into human society. So Ruby and her mom are part of a line of Kraken queens, including Grandmama, voiced by no less than Jane Fonda, and they are dedicated to protecting the ocean from threats such as the one that shows up as the movie progresses. So will Ruby embrace her destiny? On the more conventional side, will she actually be able to go to prom with her dream date, despite the arrival of a potential rival for Skater Boy, new girl in school Chelsea, voiced by Annie Murphy of Schitt's Creek? The world building is kind of soggy, pardon me, and the more familiar teen angst elements are trundled out as one might expect. But as contrived as it is, Ruby Gilman Teenage Kraken, which was directed and co-written by Kirk D'Amico, strikes me as okay, if ultimately unmemorable family entertainment. I do believe it's something you want to maybe wait for streaming.
Yeah.
It's not great, but again, it's hard to hate on it, you know?
Yeah. Okay, but unmemorable family entertainment. That's what we'll stick with.
That's what we'll stick with in this case. I wish it had been better. I always wish it had been better, you know, when I come across a film like this. So let's move on to Run, Rabbit, Run, which is a horror movie with some elements of mystery that, despite being set and made in Australia, is sadly not about an evil man-eating kangaroo on the loose. Now, I would definitely watch a movie set in Australia about man-eating kangaroos or like vampire koala bears. But Run, Rabbit, Run stars Sarah Snook, Shiv from the terrific TV series Succession, in a central role as Sarah, a medical professional who is the single mom of a young daughter named Mia. So in the wake of Sarah's father dying and the arrival of a wayward bunny rabbit at the door of the family home, Mia starts acting out, and her behavior becomes even more erratic when she and Sarah visit Sarah's mom, who is dealing with dementia and is confined to an assisted living facility. So as a family tragedy from Sarah's youth begins to haunt her, Mia's actions get crazier, and Sarah responds in an increasingly unhinged manner. It seems like there's an infection here. Although Run, Rabbit, Run had promise, the end result is primarily ponderous, with a few moments of unease, largely due to the skills of Snook and young newcomer Lily Latour as the troubled Sarah and Mia, plus longtime Aussie leading lady Greta Scacchi as Sarah's equally troubled mother, and Damon Herriman, who probably is best known stateside for his supporting turns on the TV crime drama Justified, and the wonderful, darkly comic Hitman with a Heart TV series Mr. In Between. He's Sarah's ex and Mia's father, written by Hannah Kent and directed by Dana Reed. Run, Rabbit, Run treads familiar ground, but often seems to be running in circles. It is on Netflix, though, so it's easy to access.
Would you call it missable?
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, there are so many better things to be watching. I wish, I don't want to go to a movie and not like it. I don't want to waste 2 hours of my time. It's not terrible, and it is atmospheric at times, but you'll just feel like you've been here before somehow, even with the Aussie accents.
I'm going to ding you for ponderous and move on to You Hurt My Feelings.
Okay, this came out a little while ago. You Hurt My Feelings is the latest film from the filmmaker Nicole Holofcener, who is just incredibly good at human drama and interaction and the angst of modern life and modern society. In this case, the movie is about a woman who is a novelist who she's written a memoir and got acclaim for it, but she's been struggling to write her second book and get it out there. And in the meantime, she teaches writing. She is played, happily enough, by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and her sister also has her share of problems, and she's played by Michaela Watkins. The cast is pretty terrific. The writer's husband is a psychiatrist who is not sure that he's doing that good a job, played by Tobias Menzies. And among his patients are David Cross and his real-life wife, who is pretty wonderful, Amber Tamlin. And the movie begins with a session with the couple, and they're at one another's throats. And it's very, very funny. And they have a wonderful interplay that must come from being married in real life. But the story is basically about the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character wrestling with her book, with her son, who has all kinds of issues, and how people basically try to deceive one another. She learns that her husband may not really like her new book very well, and she's having trouble getting it published, and yet he's been lying to her about how he feels towards the book. I thought it was pretty wonderful. And again, Nicole Holofcener just really knows how to dig deep into the way people interact, how they deceive one another, and how they ultimately do need one another, and what they do, the compromises they make to keep relationships going. Terrific film.
Yeah, sounds really good. Do we have time to do one more?
I think we could probably squeeze one more in really quickly. Right. It's called The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. And I'll just say quickly, it is essentially the Frankenstein story. It's all about a young woman who's smarter than most of her peers, but lives in a housing project in a southern state. And her brother has been killed because of his relationship to a local gang run by a drug-dealing gangbanger type. And her father has been hooked on drugs since the death of the brother. So her dream and her scientific knowledge combined are going to bring the brother back from the dead. She's going to somehow defeat death, which she perceives of as a disease. And this is very much inspired by Frankenstein. It's kind of like Blackenstein. I'm telling you, man, there are moments in this that I absolutely loved. And it's a little on the contrived side, but there's no complaining about the wonderful performance by Layla DeLeon Hayes as Vicaria, the young girl, and some of the other young actors playing alongside her, and the always terrific Chad L. Coleman as her father, her troubled dad. I guess I'd have to say kudos to Bomani J. Story, the writer and director of this thing. A very promising start to a career that I'm going to be following. The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, available on Shudder online. And, you know, again, there are contrivances, and you've got to, roll your eyes at some of the plot holes and the idea that this girl could actually perhaps bring her brother back from the dead. Is sort of a stretch, but nonetheless, it's carried with such verve that I really I recommend it for fans of horror and monster movie stuff. Pretty damn good in that regard. And yeah.
So let's recap it if we can. Indiana Jones, you really liked it. I'm going to go see it because of what you said today. Ruby Gilman, the Teenage Kraken, okay. You thought it was unmemorable, really.
It has its moments. It's family entertainment. That's not terrible.
Yeah. Run, Rabbit, Run, you called it missable?
Yeah.
Yeah. You Hurt My Feelings, you loved it.
I thought it was beautifully done.
And The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, contrived but cool.
A lot of promise there. It's funny, she has a little notebook that says The Modern Prometheus, which was the subtitle to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein novel. I do want to also quickly say, before we bail out, a few of the audience members here at the Mark Thompson Show were like, Michael, what's the deal with season 2 of The Bear? And I can tell you that season 2 of The Bear is not only on my radar, but it has been a total pleasure watching it. It's the second series of this outrageously good foodie dramedy from creator, writer, director Christopher Storer about a family-run Chicago beef sandwich shop. And after a bout of mismanagement, the shop becomes the responsibility of Carmi Berzatto, the family's wayward son, who had become a Michelin-starred chef and returns home to his roots to take over the business. And what happens over the course of these 2 seasons is absolutely wonderful and enthralling. The actors are terrific. Jeremy Allen White as Carmi Eben Moss-Bacharach as his cousin Richie, Ayo Edebiri as Sydney, a young woman who starts working for the family at the shop and turns out to be a very skilled chef on her own, and Abby Elliott from SNL, Oliver Platt. There are supporting guest stars that include John Bernthal, Joel McHale, Alex Moffat, and Will Poulter. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll salivate because the food scenes are just delicious.
And it's called The Bear?
The Bear, and it's on FX and Hulu. Okay. Great stuff there.
You had a question from Square. He wanted to know if the Black Girl and Her Monster is on Prime, but I think you said Shudder, right?
I think it's on Shudder and via Crypt TV. I just run a search, people. Okay. Oh, hey, by the way,
Google it.
Google it. The sci-fi series that I have most doted on this year, Silo, has ended its first season today on Apple TV with a cliffhanger. And just a little side note, I've been enjoying the hell out of the animated series Clone High on Max, created by Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, both from Spider-Verse and Lego movies, and sitcom vet Bill Lawrence. It suggests what happens when mad scientists decide to clone famous people from history, and when they reach teenage, throw them together in a high school. And it is hilarious. The love triangle of JFK, Joan of Arc, and Abe Lincoln is worth the trip. It's hilarious and very, very pointed and very, very contemporary and topical in how it approaches these characters and their histories.
Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster. People can find you at Culture Blaster and the Marina Times as well, correct?
You are correct. A more extensive discussion of the Indiana Jones movie and its predecessors in the Marina Times July issue. And it's always a pleasure, Kim. I wish you and your family a lovely holiday weekend.
You too. And thank you for bringing a little lightness and fun to our Friday, Michael Snyder.
My pleasure. Go Giants, everybody.
And that is Michael Snyder. Thank you to Michael Snyder and to Jim Avila and to John Daly and to David Katz, to all the guests we've had today. And thank you to you as well. I do want to get to some folks that have contributed to the show today. Maria Gonzalez for a $5 super sticker. You are so appreciated. Thank you for helping us on this crowd-funded show. Anne as well with a $10 super sticker today. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you so much. And then Pamela Kirby for a $5 super sticker. Of course, you can, thank you very much, Pamela. You can contribute to the show as well. The super stickers remain open even after the show is over if you're watching in replay. And you can always find us at themarkthompsonshow.com on Patreon and on PayPal as well. By the way, if you want to email us, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com is the address, and we will respond. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a great holiday weekend. Mark
Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
And I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.